Okay, border. Let's go to the border. So FBI Director Christopher Wray, total phony, he was called to testify in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday. Go.
From an FBI perspective, we are seeing a wide array of very dangerous threats that emanate from the border, and that includes everything from the drug trafficking. The FBI alone seized enough fentanyl in the last 2 years to kill 270 million people. That's just on the fentanyl side.
Okay, so last night on the evening news, there are 3 networks that do evening news. ABC News gave it 16 seconds, Wray's testimony. CBS News didn't cover it. NBC News, of course, didn't cover it. It's the FBI director warning the American people there is, quote, a wide array of dangerous threats emanating from the border. They don't cover it. Oof. Oh, man. Political ads. Okay. So you're going to see in the next 8 months, unless you turn them off, as I do, on both sides. I don't listen to political ads. Pretty hateful stuff. Here's the latest Democrat ad. Go.
I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. Between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, where the middle class finally has a fair shot, and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America.
Okay, so the Klan, right. And he wants to be president for all America, sure. Not doing me any good, Joe, or my family. You haven't done one thing in 39 months to help me or my family. Not one. Okay? Now, here is the Republican ad. Go.
Laken Riley should have been able to go on a run in broad daylight without being murdered by an illegal immigrant. But Joe Biden promised not to deport illegal immigrants.
Should that person be deported? That person should not be the focus of deportation.
Biden vowed not to detain illegal immigrants who crossed the border.
No one would be put in jail while waiting for their hearing.
So when Jose Ibarra crossed into America illegally, he was not deported. He was not put in jail. Biden also supported sanctuary cities.
Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No.
So when Jose Ibarra was arrested in New York City for endangering a child, he was freed a second time. Ibarra went to Georgia, where he beat Laken Riley to death. How many more killers has Biden set free? Building America's Future is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Okay, so CNN would not run the ad, saying it didn't meet their standards. Pretty interesting. Fox News, Newsmax accepted the ad, and so did MSNBC. Isn't that interesting? So NBC News, under siege for its irresponsible presentations, particularly on MSNBC, took the ad, but not CNN. Says a lot. All right, Donald Trump, as we said, asked to delay the New York City trial about hush money. All right, this is supposed to begin on March 25th, coming up. That's a week from next Monday. And his lawyers say, look, the Supreme Court has to decide on whether the president is able to conduct his affairs without being criminally charged. And they say this hush money thing bleeds over into the president's term. I don't know if it does or not. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure this all out. But the Trump people want to delay the trial in New York. I do not think New York will go along with that. Okay, because New York hates Trump, top to bottom, hate him. Not going to get a fair trial here. And I'm going to play you a soundbite later on. I'll back that up. Anyway, the Supreme Court now is right in the middle of the Donald Trump campaign. And the case about whether he gets immunity from all of this stuff is supposed to start hearings in front of the court April 25th. All right, so let's get to the bottom of this. Joining us now from Houston is Josh Blackman, a constitutional law professor at South Texas College of Law. So let's keep it really simple, Counselor. Donald Trump's lawyers, and of course the candidate himself, claim that he should not be prosecuted for anything that happened while he was president of the United States. That's where it all begins, correct?
That's right. There's a doctrine called immunity. And what that means is when you hold some government offices, the prosecutors can't come after you later for what you've done. This has been applied in the civil context. That is, if you sue someone for damages, for example, if you discriminate and so on, the president's been held to be immune from civil damages. But this will be the first case to consider the criminal immunity of a former president before the Supreme Court. The reason why is Trump is the first former president to be charged with a crime. So we don't really have any background upon this.
Okay, so why would the Supreme Court ever rule in his favor if there isn't a constitutional basis to do so?
So Trump's argument is that when you're president, you have to make a lot of really tough decisions. And sometimes you have to make a call that might be unpopular. So Trump has argued that if the president has a fear that he might be prosecuted by his successor, the president might be chilled. That is, he might be afraid to take the decisive action that's needed to keep this country safe. So the president needs basically a cushion, a buffer zone of ability to take certain actions. And he gives an example: if the president has to order a drone strike on someone, a U.S. citizen, can the president then be charged with murder after he leaves office? So there are a lot of reasons why president must have immunity. That's sort of the big ticket question. The more specific question is, did Trump's actions on January 6th require immunity? So is there immunity, and does Trump get it for what happened on J6?
Or is there a crime? Because remember, the special counsel is charging him with conspiracy. All right, he's not charging him with doing something, allegedly doing something that is visible. He's saying that, well, his actions, his total actions, resulted in a conspiracy. Will the Supreme Court take the weakness, I see it as a weakness anyway, of that argument into account when making their immunity call?
So at this stage, actually, the specifics don't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's conspiracy or the retention of documents in the Mar-a-Lago case. The only issue the court's deciding is sort of the big picture issue. Is there presidential immunity to criminal prosecutions? Yes or no? If the court answers yes, then we never get to conspiracy.
Okay, let me stop you there. If that's the case, then Trump is likely to lose this. Because if you were a president and you were in the White House and somebody teed you off and you strangled them to death, you can't have immunity, right?
Right. So here's an example that came up with the argument. What if the president decides to send SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his political rival? He says, I determine I have the presidential power to do this. At that point, a court might say, no, you don't. You don't have the power to assassinate your rival. That's a bad idea. And then we get to, well, maybe not everything's immune, but maybe some things within a certain, perimeter, a certain sphere of your power. So if this is close enough to what you're supposed to do, it's there. So let's use January 6th for an example. The president has no actual role in the vote counting. That's a job for the Senate to do. But the president has a role to administer various types of election laws and the like. So maybe it's not squarely in the president's duties, but maybe it's somewhere in the periphery, somewhere on the outside of the president's power. So the court will probably reject the claim of absolute immunity because then it allows you to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue outside Trump Tower. You can't do that. But there might be a more narrow scope of immunity that can protect this president and maybe other presidents as well.
All right. But then they would have to split that atom and say the case that the Justice Department is bringing against Donald Trump on January 6th is not valid, and they'd have to provide a reason that doesn't cover any other crime, right? They'd have to be very specific in that. I don't think the court's going to want to do that, Professor. I don't think they're going to want to do it.
No, I think the court will probably say there's immunity. Here's some very fuzzy guidelines of where it applies. And lower court, go figure out what to do with Trump's conduct.
Yeah,
but there's a significant timing.
But that would delay it. If they rule that in June, that delays it, past the election. One final question for you, and we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are down there in Houston. The New York civil case where the judge fined him about $400 million was obviously an abuse of the law. Any fair-minded person would say, even if Trump did all the heinous things he did, there are no victims. Nobody complained. This was a case brought by an attorney general who said, I hate Trump and I'm going to get him. But the judgment was so outrageous, that's got to go into the federal system, right? Because Trump's being denied his rights as an American. He's being punished by a state to an extent that's nobody's ever seen before. Am I wrong?
I don't know that an appeal can go to federal court. I mean, perhaps Trump can sue the attorney general in federal court saying that he was deprived of his rights, but that's probably not going to go very far. The more likely course is that the appellate court might reduce the judgment. I mean, they picked this number, $300 million for a reason. Trump said, this is how much money I have. And then magically the court set that to the amount of the judgment. So I think the judgment award might be decreased. But the fact that there's no victim, I think, does weigh against why was this case brought in the first place. And there's definitely an element of politics with the attorney general's decision.
But you don't see Trump having any redress in the federal system to get it out of the New York corrupt system.
Really? No, usually when you get sued by the government, you can't remove it to federal court just because you want to, because there might be unfairness. It's hard to do.
No, my rights are being violated as a mayor, my constitutional rights. I'm being targeted and selective prosecution by a state that despises and wants to destroy me. That argument would not bump up to the federal level?
Probably not. I think a lot of people think state court judges are biased in many ways, but we still allow them to sit and hear these sorts of cases.
That's pretty frightening, and please comment on my opinion, because now any state could destroy any citizen if they wanted to.
Right. The selective prosecution should be considered on appeal within the state court system, but I don't see how Trump gets this to federal court. Look, the U.S. Supreme Court will get an appeal eventually. They're not going to touch this, so I'm not sure they'd be much better for him in federal court than in state court.
It's frightening, I mean, because any American could be destroyed. The attorney general doesn't like you, they can come in and just wipe you out, and nobody can help you. Hey, we really appreciate it, Professor. Thanks very much for helping us out. I hope we can talk again.
Thanks, Bill.